Warning, this podcast contains violence, sexuality, gore, and other horrible and disturbing things. Listener discretion is advised. Also, the hosts of this venture are ignorant dipshits, so please do not take anything they say as fact. And enjoy the show.
Now, are you sitting comfortably? Good. Then we'll begin.
Today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be.
The atoms in your left hand probably came from a different star than your right hand.
It is our basic human right to be fucked up.
A second plane now has crashed into the other tower of the World Trade Center.
Putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay.
The defendant shall be incarcerated for the rest of her natural life with no possibility of parole.
You are not machines. You are not cattle. You are men.
We were somewhere around Barstow, on the edge of the desert, when the drugs began to take hold.
Occultae Veritatis.
Hello, occultists, and welcome back to Occultae Veritatis podcast. My name is Leon Filger, along with
Sageberry,
Ood Gallifrey,
and in studio with us,
Leon's mom,
and
Steph.
Woo! Some years ago, never mind how many, my mother sat me down and told me that my father wasn't really my father. This episode is all kinds of fucked up, so let's get fucked up. It's time for What's Your Poison?
Nice.
So, what's your poison?
Pass the cups. On today's What's Your Poison, we've got something called Saint and Sinner Syrah Cabernet. Now, Syrah in this case is spelled S-H-I-R-A-Z, which one might think is pronounced Shiraz, but it's not, and only stupid people pronounce it that way.
I've always thought it was that.
I was just going to say, hi, stupid person.
It's Syrah.
It's Syrah?
It doesn't matter how it's spelled. S-H-I-R-A-Z, S-H-I-R-A-H, anything. It's always just Syrah.
Are you calling your mother stupid?
Yeah, you're calling all of us stupid.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Making some enemies today.
Yeah, Syrah, whatever will be, will be.
It's a very different spelling of Syrah.
The future's not ours to see. So Syrah,
I need an adult to pour for me.
Yeah, me too. And now that we're drinking red again, I'd like to reiterate that excellent email we got where they theorized that you should chill a red for 20 minutes.
No, it's 4 minutes.
4.
So sorry, 4 minutes, because before houses were centrally heated, houses used to be generally colder. So room temperature used to be a bit colder. Oh. So you got to serve your red a little bit cold.
Okay, this is pretty tasty. I think Ood picked this one out, so good job, man.
Yeah.
I like this a lot.
Guess how much this bottle cost?
How much?
$11.75.
Attaboy.
Oh,
nice.
Yeah. Attaboy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and by the way, I added a new level on the Patreon for, I think it's $14.85 a month, and I did that. I looked at all the 6 packs of beer at the liquor store, and I did like an average of all of them. So if you want to buy us an average poison and pay for 1 poison per month, you can pay that one $14
I saw
a month.
that. That's awesome.
That's a good deal.
That's a good deal.
This is pretty good, actually.
Okay, so I love red wine for starters. My parents, both of whom are in studio right now, dropped me off a bottle of
Lindemann bin.
Yep. Bin 14 or whatever it was.
It was Merlot, actually.
It was Merlot, and it was delicious, so thank you very much.
Oh, good.
There's still some left, and I'm going to keep drinking it when I get home.
Nice.
I asked Ood for a good dry wine, and he picked one up. This is pretty dry. I like it. It's good. It'll get the job done. I'm going to give it 1 spermatozoa out of 4 ovums.
That's...
I'm foreshadowing the episode.
I'm going to give it 8 out of 10 just because it doesn't come in a box and I buy all my wine in boxes.
Card Bordeaux.
Yep, I always get my card Bordeaux.
Oh, yeah.
I am a classy broad.
I agree with that. No, for an $11 bottle of wine, like it's
delicious.
Good. Like it's much better than the stuff I got in church. Yeah.
Might I remind you about the words of the Queen's Vintner?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
It matters not the quality of the wine, but rather the quality of the people with whom you enjoy it.
Oh, yeah.
That's sweet.
And he's the official vintner for the Queen, so he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
I want to say, in that case, this is a 10 out of a 10 because of the company. However, I also want to give it a pretty high score because having swished it in my red Solo cup, watched the way the leg was on it and it hung on the sides of the glass. And then I put a little bit on my tongue and my palate was pleased. So it's still a 10 out of a 10.
There you go.
Nice. It sparked joy.
More than joy.
Oh boy.
I'm all about Marie Kondo, you
Throw
guys.
out your books. No.
Except for that.
Yeah.
Marie Kondo can't make me throw out my books.
Yeah.
How am I supposed to rate this after that?
I know.
Like, what a glowing review.
You can
That
give
was
me what
amazing.
you don't want of yours.
No, that's not going to happen. I'm sorry. I'm going to give it, I'm not a red wine person, but I'm going to give it a 7 because I feel like it could get me to where I want to be. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Preaching to the choir.
DNA testing kits are booming. Last year, on Black Friday weekend alone, Ancestry DNA sold roughly 1.5 million kits. That's about triple what it sold in the same period in 2016. When you spit into a test tube, you end up giving away very sensitive information about yourself. We're guessing you didn't read the fine print, so we'll let an attorney summarize it.
When you sign up for one of these tests and you click on the agree to the terms of conditions, you are giving away substantially all of your property and privacy and legal rights to this DNA.
Your DNA data reveals information about your behavior, the diseases you're predisposed to, and the relatives you didn't even know you had. It also reveals information about your family members, even if they didn't take a test. And if you agree to participate in research, you're not just allowing companies to trace your ancestry. You're allowing them to give your data to third parties. And it's not always clear who these third parties are or how secure your data is in their hands.
If you have taken one of these consumer DNA tests and it indicates that you have a likelihood for cancer or you're predisposed to certain types of medical conditions, the insurance company can ask you about your knowledge of your own health. And if you lie to the insurance company, they are allowed to decline your application or rescind your application if they find out about it in the future.
So far, we haven't seen any public examples of genetic test results being abused. But that doesn't mean it won't happen in the future. A lot of these risks are already spelled out if you read the fine print. But privacy advocates and lawmakers are working to get these companies to make the risks of DNA testing clearer to consumers. In the meantime, you might want to think twice before you spit into a test tube.
Okay, so genetic testing identifies changes in chromosomes, genes, or proteins, diagnostic and non-diagnostic. There's lots of reasons for doing diagnostic DNA testing, things like predisposition for developing a medical condition or predicting the effectiveness of certain drugs. Non-diagnostic DNA testing is the focus of this episode, and in particular, consumer DNA testing or direct-to-consumer DNA testing, and even more specifically, testing for ancestral lineage and paternity. This is exciting. So consumer DNA testing services include 23andMe, Ancestry DNA, CRI Genetics, Family Tree DNA, Living DNA, and MyHeritage DNA, etc. I've personally sent my DNA to 23andMe, Ancestry DNA, and MyHeritage DNA, and it's told me some exciting things that we'll get to in just a moment.
Okay.
Cool.
So they all work pretty well the same way. So you spit in a tube and you mail the tube to the testing company, and then in 3 to 12 weeks, depending on the service, they get in touch with you, letting you know how much Neanderthal blood you have and who your real dad is. That last one, paternity, is all kinds of controversial. The medical ethics involved in digging up one's past and potentially destroying the lives of innocent people is fucking fascinating.
Yeah.
So here's the examples of the controversy.
And anybody,
controversy.
I was waiting for that.
and to that point, anybody that's seen like their fill of Jerry Springer knows how like controversial that can be.
Yeah.
You are not the father.
Okay, so anyway, the controversy is as follows.
Controversy?
I throw up in my mouth every time you say that.
Would you guys...
Did I teach you how to talk like that?
No, you taught me how to say controversy, and I realized it was wrong and changed it.
It's not wrong.
You know what, Leon? I believe communication is a common message delivered between two people, and I get what you're putting down. So.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Good.
I hate it.
Okay, so whatever.
Me too.
Now, Leon, you ask, why are you doing a show on consumer DNA testing? Well, one evening, several years ago, my mother sat me down and told me that my dad, long since deceased, was not my real dad. That was, until recently, the weirdest moment of my life. The following weirdest moment of my life was when I first met my biological half-sister at the Broadway Roastery last summer. And it was terrible. It was a 1-hour meeting. I was having a panic attack through the whole thing. I thought I was going to vomit on the table.
Yeah.
And after an hour, I'm like, oh, I'm leaving. And I just got up and that was the end of it.
Oh, boy.
Our second meeting went a lot better.
Hey, it's Leon Filger. It's Tuesday the 22nd,
and my 3 sisters, 2 of whom I had never met before, just went home. We had a great time, ate cake, drank wine, and my family has now gotten bigger and better. Talk to you guys soon. Bye. So the following weirdest moment of my life, and it's weirder, and I submit this is the single weirdest thing that's ever happened to a human being ever in the history of humanity.
Damn, that's a bold claim.
I was just going to say.
Every human being?
Ever. This is nothing weirder has happened. Nothing weirder has happened.
Sure.
You ready for it?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay, at 5:30 p.m. one Sunday late last year, I met my anonymous sperm donor for the first time.
Ooh.
I looked at him, and in that moment, I saw my eyes looking back at me. If that's not fucked up, I don't know what is. Pour me another drink.
It's pretty fucked up.
Yeah. So there's a few reasons for the controversy behind consumer DNA.
Thank you for saying it correctly.
Just a minute. His eyes are brown?
Yes.
That's not what they told me they would be.
Well, anyway.
Interesting.
We're not at that part yet. Hold on.
Okay, I'll wait.
Hold on a minute. So there's 2 reasons that consumer DNA testing is kind of sketchy. One of them that I said is that it has the power to ruin people's lives. I mean, everything from like adoptions, anonymous donors, surrogates. When people made their anonymous sperm donations 30 years ago, they never expected this technology to exist. When you said you were anonymous, it was assumed that you were anonymous forever. And now because of these services, that's no longer the truth.
Oh, they're starting to be able to kind of triangulate and track these people down.
Yeah, and there's like 1.2 million people in Canada so far who've used these consumer DNA testing.
Oh, right.
That's 10% of our population.
Jesus.
And it's 32 million in the United States. Again, 10% of their population.
And with the amount of DNA we already share, if you just count the differences, that can narrow it down quite a bit.
Yeah, it's frightening. And there's a bunch of groups that are opposed to it. Like, direct-to-consumer genetic testing is controversial. Critics of this testing argue that there's a lot of risk involved. The advertising for it's unregulated. The different testing services are saying all kinds of things about diseases it can predict and will determine if you're going to get Huntington's disease and whether you should have children. It's all kinds of stuff. And none of the claims are really verified, and none of it's vetted by the government. So it's all problematic, and there's no country in the world right now that yet has regulations on consumer DNA testing. So it's the Wild West out there.
Consumer DNA testing kits are becoming increasingly popular. It's a good way to find out more about your genetic makeup, family history, and health risk. But at what cost? There are concerns that these companies could be misusing your private DNA data. Suspicions really kicked off when Senator Chuck Schumer condemned DNA testing companies at a news conference, stating, "Here's what many consumers don't realize, that their sensitive information can end up in the hands of unknown third-party companies. There are no prohibitions, and many companies say that they can still sell your information to other companies."
The thing I think that's important to realize is that there is only a single law that covers the sale or our use of our genetic data today, and that's GINA, the Genetic Non-Discrimination Act. And that covers the use of data by employers and insurance companies. It's definitely an area I would be concerned about because as of today, there's no restrictions on that type of use.
More than 80% of consumers at major DNA testing companies consent to having their DNA shared for research.
We do work with collaborators on those genomes which are consented for research and research only, and for those who are de-identified and accessed in aggregate.
So should consumers be concerned?
I would be concerned in the future what could happen. While I don't think many of these companies are doing that today, actually I don't think any of them are doing it today, the thing to keep in mind is that there's nothing preventing them from doing so.
So like some advertising for DNA testing has been criticized as conveying exaggerated and inaccurate message about the connection between genetic information and disease risk, utilizing emotions as a selling factor. An advertisement for one genetic testing for breast cancer stated, quote, "There's no stronger antidote for fear than information." So that's, I mean, clearly preying on frightened women.
Yeah.
And none of these tests can guarantee one way or another whether you're going to get breast cancer.
Yeah.
Well, wasn't there a story that came out where 2 identical twins did this, like they went to 23andMe or whatever, and they both had wildly different results, even though they should be the same?
I was just going to ask too, because if you did it with 3 different
tests,
and what did they come back fairly similar? Or like,
see, here's the thing. I'm glad you brought that up because I'll jump into this part of the subject instead.
Interesting.
Most of these consumer DNA tests, particularly like Ancestry and 23andMe, will tell you where your ancestors are from.
Yeah.
And it'll give you sort of these maps with like a blob on it where you people came from that part of the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've taken 3 tests and all of them gave me 3 relatively different results.
Oh.
What the?
So
really?
they've all exclusively said I'm Irish and Scottish, but then some have said I'm from the Iberian Peninsula. Some said I'm a little bit Russian. A couple of them said I'm East Asian. So, I mean, the Irish and the Scottish I've got nailed down, but everything else is like, what the fuck? How do they know this?
Yeah.
And the reason is they use different algorithms. So when they first started out with these testing, there had to have been a patient one, right? The first person to get their genetic testing done.
Yeah.
And so they picked someone who they knew with certainty was from Scotland, has always been in Scotland. Their Highlanders went back 1,000 generations.
Mm-hmm.
So their DNA is definitely Scottish.
And then use that.
Then they
as
use
like a
that
base.
as the mold. And so
Okay.
every region in the world, they would draw up 1 and then 10 and then 100 people who they knew were from that area forever and use that to compare other DNA to that area. So because they use different algorithms and different tests and different ways of measuring these things, all without any regulation, you've got different tests now telling you that you're from completely different parts of the world.
To see if they work, we're trying them out using identical triplets from California, Kaylee, Kelsey, and Corey. Unlike regular siblings, they share the same exact DNA.
We're going to test their ancestry today, and we're going to test 3 popular companies. We're going to start over here with Ancestry DNA, you've probably seen the commercials on TV, 23andMe, and MyHeritage DNA. So you're identical triplets.
Right, yeah.
So within each company, the results should be exactly the same.
They should be. I think so.
And between the companies, they should be.
They should be.
All right, let's see.
Let's do it.
First up, Ancestry DNA.
Okay, so the way this one works is you have to spit in it.
Okay.
All the way up to the line, filled with spit.
Okay.
They follow the directions to a T,
That's so gross.
filling their test tubes with saliva, and pack up the samples. Next up, 23andMe.
More spitting.
A kit you can buy right from the pharmacy.
On this one, too, you have to fill it up to the fill line.
They spit and spit.
Good.
And seal this one up too. On to the last kit, MyHeritage DNA. This test wants them to swab the inside of their cheeks.
All right, directions, they do it for 30 to 60 seconds, so we have a timer going.
First the left cheek, then the right, sealing them up. All these samples ready to be shipped.
Okay, I'm going to mail these away. I'll be back for the results.
Okay, bye, Jess.
We planned that. Bye.
Weeks later, I head back to California with the results.
You guys ready for this?
So ready.
Remember, since they're identical, all of these results should come back the same. Starting us off, Ancestry DNA.
Now remember, you all have different last names, so they had no way of knowing that you'd be related at all. But guess what? DNA match extremely high.
Good.
For each one of you, it gave the other 2 names as saying that you have a DNA match.
Oh, that's interesting.
It worked.
Yeah, it works. Okay. All right.
You want me to break it down even further for you?
Please, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So according to Ancestry DNA, you're 93% European.
Okay. Interesting.
You have some Scandinavia in you, some Great Britain, some Iberian Peninsula,
Okay.
and 5% Middle Eastern.
Yeah, it's accurate. Accurate.
But how will the results from 23andMe compare?
100% DNA match for all 3 of them.
This test also saying they're Scandinavian, British, and Middle Eastern.
Okay. Another good test.
Okay, 2 kits down, 1 more to go. Will MyHeritage DNA match up with the rest?
Another 100% DNA match. And I feel like I'm a game show host.
You win again.
You win again. You get to be sisters.
This one saying almost the same thing. They're Scandinavian, English, and North African.
You see enough product tests on TV. Are you surprised at the accuracy of these?
Yes.
Very surprised. Makes you have confidence into really pursuing your heritage after going through this.
The DNA doesn't lie.
Sisters.
It's sketchy.
Yeah.
Seems like a waste of money, except for in your case, I guess.
Well, no, I mean, it was huge for me. I had no idea. Like the sister I grew up with, who's one of my 5 half sisters now, also did 23andMe, and she found 2 half brothers.
Wow.
Now, here's part of the controversy. You're welcome. One of the half brothers that she contacted did not know that he was conceived from donor sperm.
Oh my God.
Didn't know.
Yikes.
And so my sister went online, contacted him, and she was how he found out that his dad wasn't his real dad.
Oh, no.
Man.
And then she found another half-brother who completely denied that he was conceived from donor sperm. The tests were lying. She was lying. Everyone was lying. It's not true. La-da-da, la-la-la, can't hear you.
Oh.
So, I mean, in both those cases, like, that's super fucky to find out that way.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough that Mom told us.
Yeah.
Like, how many years ago? 6, 7 years ago?
Yeah, probably.
5 years ago?
6.
Okay, let's jump into the story right now because I'm excited about this. So 33 and a half years ago would have been March of 1985.
Well, it was a lot leading up to that. But in March of 1985, after having been 100% convinced that your father could not conceive a child and that I could,
And what was the reason for him not being able to conceive?
Well, it turns out that when he was a child, he had the mumps and therefore was rendered sterile. It took us a long time of trying to have a child to finally go and do all the tests to find out that he was sterile and that I could indeed continue with a pregnancy. I just needed to find a way to accomplish that. At that time in its infancy, the local hospital, or do we know where we're from? Can I mention it?
The University of
The
Saskatchewan.
University of Saskatchewan College of Medicine had a program that was just in its infancy to help infertile couples. My family doctor referred me there. I finally got in to see them. They wanted to do some more tests on me. They did that and eventually matched me, they said, with a sperm donor that would be of the same height, same hair coloring, same eye coloring as my spouse who wanted to be a father along with me as a parent. And so I went ahead with the procedure. It did cost some money, it seemed like a lot at the time. In today's age, it would be nothing.
How much was it?
Well, the thing is, I wanted you so desperately that I didn't give them 1 month's worth of trying. I gave them a year's worth of insemination money so that I could just keep doing this until I got pregnant. So although
do you mind if I ask a potentially personal question?
Yes.
Like I found it interesting that you found somebody that looked approximately like your spouse. And
I didn't.
Oh, well, like that's who you were looking for.
That's what they told me they were giving me as a donor.
Of course, but like I was wondering, do you think it was more of a like to like quiet suspicions kind of thing, or did you kind of like as a gut instinct just want it to look like your spouse?
That was out of my hands.
Okay.
They chose to provide the people who wanted donors with someone that was matched sort of closely to what your husband looked like.
Okay.
So that when you had this offspring, it would look maybe a bit like both of you.
Okay.
More so than,
They picked someone at random.
Yeah.
Okay.
But as now Leon has told me, the sperm donor has brown eyes, which isn't what they told me, because my husband at the time was about 5'10", 5'11", blonde hair, blue eyes.
That's not you.
And that's not at all what the sperm donor ended up looking like.
Well, I mean, they ended up matching the height okay, because I'm 5'5"3/4", and so is my donor.
I know, but you could have been taller. Anyway, what was your original question? I got sort of sidetracked there. You wanted to know what happened. So there was some legal things to go through. We had to go to a lawyer and sign papers for confidentiality. We were told that the sperm donor was totally 100% anonymous. We would never know anything other than the fact that supposedly they'd been checked out very carefully for family diseases and that they were healthy, and that after a couple of years, the records or any information about this sperm donor that might have been connected with me in a file, although it was just by number, would be eliminated or destroyed. So anyway, I went there, and after my initial meetings with Dr. we were turned over, or I was turned over to their nurse who actually did the insemination procedures. I would arrive at the university, and they obviously would have contacted the donor who would bring in his semen. And then it was, I'll use the old turkey baster analogy. You'd go into their room and they'd
fill you up.
Check the mobility and the health of the semen that they were provided by the donor, and then they would insert it into my body, and I'd lie there for half an hour with my legs in the air, and then I was free to go back to work or carry on with my day.
Did it have Barry Manilow playing?
And they did these. You had to track when you were ovulating, so you had to be very in tune with what was going on in your body. And they would do one insemination, wait a day, and then do one more insemination for the first round. Right. Well, guess what, folks? I got pregnant, so one round later, one round later, Leon was conceived, and so I was
Did they give you the rest of your money back?
No,
I was just going to ask.
They didn't call it a fee. It was like a donation.
Oh,
okay. So I donated. I chose to donate a year's worth of money just because I was so excited to finally be given a chance to have a baby.
Yeah.
So you just kind of do what you feel in your heart. And wow, I was so excited that this opportunity was available in Saskatoon back in 1985.
No kidding.
Yeah. So from then on, like until 6 years ago when you told me, Dad, who died a decade ago, 11 years ago, had said, don't ever fucking tell the kids, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And that's another interesting thing. How do they handle the birth in the hospital? My family doctor, of course, knew that you were donor inseminated, but you get to the hospital and you get all the paperwork for the baby and everything else. And back then, you were really advised that this was nobody's business but your own.
Right.
There was no thought of telling your child. You were counseled not to, that this is now your child, your husband's and yours. So in the hospital, you sign the father's name. In fact, I asked my family physician, what do we put on the information at the hospital? The father that's there in the waiting room or in the birthing room with you is the father, and you sign his name, and that's who the father is till forevermore.
Wow.
So it's not like it is now. You were, like I say, counseled to keep your mouth shut because you are the parents, period, end of story.
That was almost like a protection from like the stigmas back then too, eh?
Probably. They didn't know any better. Everything I've read since then, because believe you me, it was not an easy choice to come forward with this information for either of my children. I knew what it was going to do. The longer I waited, I knew how much more harm I was probably causing, but I felt I had to keep that secret for Leon's father, because that's what he requested. And even though we were estranged, I still kept the secret. And also because, you know what? It's probably easier to do nothing than to do something. But it just ate away at me. I could no longer keep this secret. But things have changed. People now want to know. There are ways of tracking donors, even if you're not just going to DNA testing. I believe donors now have the option to be known or not known, just sort of like adoptions. So back then it was not like that, but I have no regrets because I got Leon.
The Donor Sibling Registry is a privately run website out of Colorado.
So that's how the kids and the families can all find each other.
It's voluntary, so not all siblings or donors are found.
These teens think that more donor-conceived children should be able to meet and bond with half-siblings. Right now in Canada, there's no government-regulated registry that keeps track of people conceived through sperm donation. But some health and legal advocates say the government should be tracking this kind of information.
And so I would strongly advocate for a public registry as opposed to a private registry.
Law professor Vanessa Grubin also raises questions about the safety and security of unregulated registries.
When you're dealing with sensitive information, health information, genetic relationships between individuals, that's the type of information that you want to be kept and stored and collected by the government or an agency that's arm's length from the government.
Yeah. And so I'll jump in with the story at that point 6 years ago when you sat me down and told me. I remember it somewhat vividly and somewhat not, because I remember taking a fistful of Ativan when I was done and sort of blacked out.
Oh, yeah.
Like you do.
I got the manila envelope, and I guess my sister who was beside me got 2 identical manila envelopes, opened them up, and there was documentation about this clinic and what the hell had gone on.
I tried to find as much information as I could for you guys, because I felt somehow that if I could provide you with information, it wouldn't be as traumatic.
Yeah. Do you still have that? Because I lost my envelope.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
She does.
I made 3 copies. It was a lot of work to gather together all of that. But the only significant information I got from the clinic was I have the 2 dates that the insemination took place with a number, and the number does not exist anymore.
Right.
Wow.
And the same thing with your sister. I've got that information for her. Different donor, although here's another thing that I was told, that it was probably very likely that I could get the same donor for both of my pregnancies. So at least you and your sister would have been 100%
the
same, but you're not, nor did you ever look alike. And now, now the mystery is solved.
Yeah.
I love your sister, Leon.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah.
So at the time you had told me, and I think we all believe this, that the donors were all med students. Right. That was sort of
we were said they probably were.
They probably were. So my donor, it turns out, was an agriculture student. So
Farmer.
They were picking from everywhere. Yeah. Yeah. So when I found out, my sister and I had 2 completely different reactions. Hers, I think, was largely apathy, if I recall correctly. Like, I mean, she was traumatized by it as much as I was, perhaps. But she said, okay, mystery's over. I'm done. That's it. That's all I need to know. And I developed a burning obsession with figuring out who my donor was.
That surprises me not at all.
No.
But it surprises me. So really,
With Leon?
I thought that the kids would have completely opposite reactions, because your sister still and always has adored her father and given him all sorts of leeway for the kind of upbringing that she'd had with him. But the bottom line is she loves the man.
Yeah.
And therefore I thought this would be really heartbreaking for her to find out.
And it largely wasn't.
That this father wasn't really her father.
Yeah.
But you're the one who had the nuclear meltdown, and she sort of carried on and took care of you.
Yeah, no, I quite literally lost my mind. I had a break from reality, and I was so shocked by the news that I was briefly psychotic. I mean, my sister's told me that I drove us home from the small town where my parents lived back to Saskatoon, and she said I was swerving all over the road like I was drunk. I hadn't had anything to drink that night, to my knowledge, but I was just completely out of my mind. And I got home. I'm not sure if you guys heard this story before. I got home and I took all of my pills. Every medication I had.
You didn't tell me, and I'm not sure I want to know again.
So I took all of my pills, like literally all of them, fistful of pills, and crawled into bed still in my winter jacket, closed my eyes and thought it'll all be over soon. And then I woke up at some point the next day, still in bed, soaked in piss, just swimming in lakes of piss.
Gross.
And the worst hangover I'd ever had, but I wasn't dead. So
I'm glad about that.
Had to phone the pharmacy and get my prescriptions refilled because I'd eaten them all. So then I thought, because I was under the impression that my donor was a med student, I went to the U of S College of Medicine, and I went to the 3rd floor where they have all their class pictures.
And you looked for yourself.
that.
Yeah, and I found the class of 1985, and I dragged a couch over because it was high up on the wall, and I started studying every single picture in that class photo of like 300 med students.
I did too on your behalf. I did lots of research.
Yeah.
Thinking that you might be onto something.
So I looked at the first one, wasn't me. I looked at the second one, dead ringer.
Oh.
And I was like, well, this is terrible. Like, they're all going to look like me. The second one looks like me. So I went to the 3rd and the 4th and the 5th and went down the entire rest of the class and got nothing. I went back to the second one, and I thought, that's me. That's my donor. So I took a picture of it and texted Mom, and you had said that could be him, right? Like, because he looks an awful lot like me.
He did. And I went ahead and took old photographs of you that would have been around the age that he was and started doing comparisons. I remember that it was a dead ringer, and here's here's Leon's father.
And this is a classic example of confirmation bias.
Yeah.
Like I wanted it so badly to be true that I wouldn't have dared believe it wasn't.
Right.
So the guy's name was John Balaton, and he's a physician at the Foothills Medical Center in Calgary, Alberta. So I wrote him a letter, and I was like, "Hey, did you donate in this program? Like, were you around for that?" And I clarified, like, I'm not looking for parental love or money or anything. I just want to know where I came from. And he didn't get back to me. So then I sent him a registered letter and got back the Image from Canada Post. And it was someone else's signature, probably someone in his office. And I tried to contact him a total of 3 times, the poor guy. I should really get in touch with him now and say, psych,
you're off the hook.
My bad. So it ended up not being him. And then lo and behold, early last year, this consumer DNA testing became the thing. So I got a kit. My sister actually got a kit. She bought 2 and had a GoFundMe to pay for these kits because
I think I donated to that.
You may have, yeah. Said like, we're both looking for our donor. Please give us money to afford these kits or whatever.
And she's so good at that.
She's good at that. So I got the kit for free, which was great, and spit in the tube and mailed it off. And when I got it back, you log on the website with the special code they give you, and there were 2 half-sibling matches. And one of them was my sister, and the other was someone else.
Oh.
And I contacted that someone else, and she had just been told by her mother that her dad wasn't her real dad. She just got the talk like weeks earlier, and she was told her dad's still alive, and she was told never to tell her father. So she's still not public about this, so I'm not going to use her name. So I contacted her and I said, like, you're a half sibling match. Like, what's up with that? And she's like, yeah, my mom went to the sperm donor program at the U of S. My mom did too. So holy shit, we're sisters. And she said,
sisters?
Or we're siblings. And she said, and there's one more of us. She has a brother who had the same donor. So now I've got a half brother as well. And then she said, oh, by the way, there's another one. We've got another half sister from a different mother who lives in Australia. And I've been in contact with her.
Are these different DNA programs that she found these
were all
ones on?
23. One of them was Ancestry. The other was 23.
Yeah, because it would have shown up then for you.
So I got in touch with this other sister in Australia, and we hit it off, and it was crazy. And then last year I went for coffee, like I said, at the Broadway Roastery with this half sister I'd met, and it was like the first date from hell, basically. Like I didn't take any Ativan going into it, which was a total mistake because
rookie error.
I was moments away from vomiting the entire time we were there. Peppered each other with questions because it's like, holy fuck, this is the most incredible thing ever. We don't really look alike, which was probably helpful because I was afraid that I would see myself. And then Mrs. Leon Filger got pregnant, and little Leon Filger Jr. popped out, and
I love him so much.
Yeah, and like before that, when Mrs. Leon Filger got pregnant, my obsession with finding where I came from was sparked again. And it wasn't so much that I wanted to know where I came from, it's that I wanted to be able to tell him not only where he came from, but who he came from.
Yeah.
And it was really important because he's got a grandmother and grandfather, my mom and my stepdad, who love him dearly and are fabulous grandparents to him.
Yes,
and
they're part of my family too.
And on Mrs. Leon Filger's side, he has a Nana and Papa who love him very much. And it's my firm belief that it takes a village to raise a child, and so the more villagers, the better. So made the decision just a couple of weeks ago that my donor was going to meet my son. And we had actually planned it for this coming Tuesday, but he ended up leaving on vacation. So we did one better. And this is where it gets a little bit fuckier. When I first met the donor, I'll paint the picture for you. It was at O'Shea's Irish Pub.
Yep.
I had arrived half an hour early because I wanted to put down a pint of cider before he showed up as some liquid courage.
Absolutely. Remember that story.
Because you need a fucking pint in you to deal with that. And the motherfucker was early.
He was as early as you.
I had just gotten my drink, and then this guy walked through the door, and I'm like, oh shit, because I didn't know what this guy looked like, and he's like, yeah, I'm short, and I've got like big crazy mustache. And I'm like, okay, short, big crazy mustache. Sure enough, he was short and had a big crazy mustache. So he walked in and just kind of gave like a stupid wave, and I gave a stupid wave, and inside I'm like, oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck.
Did you start drinking then?
Way too sober for this. So he just like pointed at the bar like, hey, he's going to go get a drink. So he walked over to the bar, and I'm just pounding the cider like, as hard as I can. And he had a pint of Guinness, and he sat down in front of me and said, hi, and that's his name. And it was terrifying because I really needed my half-sister to be there. We were both meeting him at the same time. And she had said she was going to be half an hour early so we could get like pre-drunk and deal with this together.
That's fair.
So about 3 minutes after the donor got there and sat down, my sister comes through the door, makes eyes at me. I make eyes at her. She takes a few steps further and realizes the donor is sitting at the table already. And she has a look on her face like, what the fuck? What's he doing here? And she just like kind of sat down beside me, and like we all kind of did like a wave and a nod. And she said, hi, I'm this. He said, hi, I'm that. And she ordered a drink, and we ordered food. And we were at this bar for like 2 hours talking about where we had come from. And it was like this bizarre existential conversation that was, like I said, the trippiest thing ever.
Mm-hmm.
And what was really, really crazy was when he sat down across from me. It's still a dimly lit pub, but I saw like my eye structure staring back at me. It was like somewhat of a mirror image. My facial hair is cooler than his.
You have pretty good facial hair.
Thank you. Thank you. And yeah, he did have a bizarre mustache. It still does. But it was the weirdest thing ever. And I had told him when we went to meet, like it had been a few months earlier that I'd found him actually on Ancestry DNA, and my mother had been on Ancestry DNA. So when I was there, I found a parent match as her, and there was another parent, and this is how I found donor. And I messaged him on the Ancestry DNA messenger service, which is the least efficient method of communication since cans and string.
Oh boy.
And his nickname was Plugger79. And I talked to him, and he was a dick.
Oh, no.
Wow.
And I basically told him, like, yeah, I repeated the line. I'm not looking for parental love or money, or I just want to know where I came from. And so he sent me a copy of his DNA information of all the stuff that he was predisposed to. And that was it. That was the end of the conversation.
Oh.
And I was like, well, that's not really what I was looking for. So I talked to the one sister in Australia and explained to her the problem I was having. And she said, no, like, keep at it. Like, go back and ask him again.
He just needs a nudge.
He needs a nudge. And so I asked him again and asked him again and asked him again. And then he admitted that, yes, he had been a part of this program and made himself out to be a knight in shining armor. Like all these donors had come in to save women in infertile couples. And I thought, yeah, he is kind of a dick. But I persisted, and he softened over time. Like, I think he had just been really guarded about me because he wasn't expecting a child to show up in his life all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, like, he was inclined to meet, but needed to talk to his wife first because she didn't know that he was part of this program either.
Could I ask one question?
Yeah, for sure.
How could a person put their DNA out there when they know they've been a donor and not expect something?
And that's the question I haven't asked yet, but it is how dare you further put your DNA out there, and then when someone comes along and says, hey, I'm your kid, well, fuck you, I'm not talking to you.
Right. I mean, you must know what the reaction is going to be.
Yeah. So like I said, eventually he softened, and he said he was inclined to meet, and he had to talk it over with his wife, who had no idea he was in this program, and she cleared it. And then, like I said, we had this meeting with him and my sister and I at O'Shea's. And then sometime later, and this is very recently, within the last couple of weeks, he has 2 teenage daughters from his real marriage, his real daughters from the real family, who are, of course, half-sisters to me, and my other 2 half-sisters, my other half-brothers. So there's 6 siblings altogether so far. Of course, only 10% of Canadians have sent in their DNA, so there's a potential to be a lot more of us. And I just wait every day when more ancestors pop up on these services, like, oh, it could be a sibling. So these 2 teenage girls who are from his family, the family he had, didn't know about this. And he said that he was going to need to take, like a lot of time to figure out how to tell them. And I was under the impression that he was going to take a few months to tell them, but he didn't, because last week he told me that they both knew and that they were excited that they had siblings and that they were excited that they had a nephew.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's so nice.
Yeah. So
Can you imagine that? Like 2 girls And then all of a sudden,
finding out in one go your dad was a sperm donor, and oh, by the way,
you've
there's
got
4 other siblings.
Right? And boys like you and the other fellow, 2 brothers.
Yeah,
when
2
when you're
brothers,
just
2 sisters.
Yes.
Yeah, it's bizarre. So they were also inclined to meet. So I was going to have donor over on Tuesday to meet Leon Filger Jr., his biological grandson, for the first time, because we had sort of decided after our second meeting that, again, it takes a village to raise a kid, and that it was probably a good idea for him to be in baby's life somehow.
Hey guys, it's Leon. Yesterday, my donor met my son for the very first time, which was super weird and super happy, and baby Leon Filger now has a new grandpa. So if you're wondering how that was going to go down, that's how it went down. Couldn't have possibly gone any better, and I'm completely over the moon. Talk later. Bye.
Our donor was supposed to meet my kid on Tuesday. He ended up not being able to make it, but instead his 2 daughters are coming over to my house on
that's
Tuesday
so nice.
to meet me, and the sister, the first sister is also coming in, and the 2 of us are going to be meeting. So like 4 of us half siblings at my place to have drinks and appies on Tuesday. So this is going to be incredibly bizarre. Like meeting the first sister was a real mindfuck.
Well, you guys all knew that you were out there in the world, wondering who you belonged to.
Us to come along, but these 2 girls
were just sitting in their home with their real mom and real dad, and boom, this kind of.
I looked them up on Facebook literally 4 days ago. I found their names 4 days ago. I put them all in a group chat with other sister 4 days ago, and I had sort of explained to them what the first sister had been doing, that she had, taken an active role in baby's life. And I had said, I've got this 4-month-old at home, and he's your nephew, and you can do whatever you want with him. If you want to never see him again, that's fine. If you want to send him a card once a year, that's fine. If you want to visit him regularly and be his aunts, that's fine. But I'll leave that in your court. And both of them had said very quickly on Messenger, no, we want in.
Awesome.
Wow.
So baby's now got 2 new aunts.
The more the merrier. I mean, really, the older I get, the more important it becomes to find people, not even biological people, but people that mean something to you and can become part of your family in some extended fashion. That's fantastic.
Well, like us, like we're totally
right.
your family.
Exactly.
Like 100%.
Or Leon, your best friend is like our adopted son.
Yeah, Richard is totally.
Yeah. Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I'm Leon Filger's auntie. Like,
yeah, fact.
Yeah,
right.
So I'm going to diverge from this conversation for a little bit because Jesus, we put down a lot of tape, and I'm really happy about that. This is going to be a good episode.
I'm so excited.
I wanted to talk about another side of the controversy that's come up recently. Thank you.
You're welcome.
If you read the fine print in every single one of these DNA services, and I just went back 2 days ago when I was researching this episode, read the fine print, and yes, it's true. There's a clause in the terms of use that says they can sell your genetic information.
That just came up. That's like a new controversy.
Just came up, a new controversy. Yeah.
That's a crazy controversy.
You're going to start saying that like in your day-to-day life.
Absolutely,
And
I know
like,
I
what
am.
the fuck
I'm
is
already
wrong
like,
with you?
Controversy. I have to practice that. Controversy. How many times do I have to say it before it becomes mine?
Yeah. So what 23andMe did is sold a shit ton of user data to GlaxoSmithKline, a drug company.
Yeah.
So yeah, get this shit. So basically GlaxoSmithKline now has a list of people with certain inheritable disorders, and they can now target them for drug sales.
Yeah.
Fuck
is right. Yeah.
How crazy is that?
Kind of dystopian.
Yeah. That's eerily familiar to me. Do you think that's possible that they're doing that already? I can't pinpoint or remember, but I swear I've had some kind of
apparently they haven't
comparison to what's wrong with me.
Hasn't manifested itself yet.
Oh,
that could
making
be
it up.
White coat syndrome, but it's terrifying. And the fact is, the data is not encrypted. You are not just a number. You are your first
yourself,
name, your last name, your address, your everything. And now GlaxoSmithKline has got my information. They have mine, and they know all the shit that's wrong with me. Some of which I don't know yet because none of this shit's gone wrong. And then they're going to find out that, oh, you got Huntington's disease. Well, by the way, we've had these special pills pre-mixed for you. They're $1,000. Come get them.
Oh, dystopian.
It is exactly. And the Canadian Medical Association put out a guide on the direct-to-consumer genetic testing last year, and they came up with a bunch of recommendations and basically said that genetic testing shouldn't be in the hands of anyone but a physician.
Yeah.
That the only person who orders a genetic test should be a physician. They also went on to say that Canada's family physicians are wholly unprepared to deal with genetic testing because at no time in their practice have they ever had to order genetic tests.
Right.
So basically what the Canadian Medical Association has said that no one should be doing this ever, anywhere, for any reason.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Well, is there anyone around this table who hasn't had DNA testing?
I haven't had DNA testing.
I don't think I have either. I know both my parents did the 23andMe though. So
Yeah.
Good?
Nope. Not yet. You guys got to get on it.
I know, we do.
So I'm just going to end off with a couple of stats here. And this is like pretty fucky in itself. Genetic testing is a booming business. The global DNA testing market is set to reach $10 billion a year by 2022.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
More than 12 million Americans as of a month ago have already sent their DNA to be analyzed by these companies. And it's 1.2 million in Canada.
Yikes.
The 23andMe sold 1.5 million kits between Black Friday and Cyber Monday alone last year.
Holy shit.
Holy shit.
So this is becoming huge. So I guess, send
it's
in
a
your
thing.
DNA and get ready.
Somebody who was on the podcast just a couple episodes ago got one for Christmas.
Yep. So
Yeah.
take them with care. People might come knocking on your door who you didn't know existed, and it might fuck up your life. Also, they're going to sell your data to drug companies, so maybe don't do it. That's about all I have to say about that. Any comments, questions, queries, concerns, statements, or outbursts from the panel?
No, that was fantastic.
Just one thing to add, Leon.
Yeah.
This is Dan here. Your mother and I actually, from these tests, are seventh cousins.
Jesus.
That's not a thing.
Which means that you're actually related.
Wonderful. For Occultae Veritatis podcast, my name is Leon Filger, along with
Sage Murray.
Ood Gallifrey.
And in studio with us,
your mom.
And
Steph.
Have a good night.
Love you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Another interesting show. You always have to trust Leon to bring the interesting stuff in. For our palate cleanser, we will be playing a song sent in by a listener. We sent out a call out there to anybody who has music or has a friend that wants music to send it in so we can play it on the end of our show. We can, soothe the soul that we just stirred up with our episodes. And your palate cleanser today is Your Dance by Just Tizzy. That's Your Dance by Just Tizze. Enjoy and see you in the after show.
Hit me like a ray of light emitted by the biggest source of energy in any system. Bring me back to life and light me up when your waves acid free as they go out of your transmitter. Make my blood rush through my veins, it feels as if we are creating a whole new universe. In control of time, we'll stretch it up and make it slither as we please fast forward and reverse. Painting pictures made of light with you comprising the invisible component made of matter. Antiparticles competing hard against your mass, but now the picture here will be the latter. It's as though there was no need for anything else to be given back to brought into existence. Cause we got it all, and if something goes wrong, we start creating a new world with a new wisdoms. And here comes your dance that makes me feel like I'm living again. Your dance that spreads energy like an engine train. Your dance that nobody will be doing like you do. And here comes your dance that makes my blood rush through arteries and veins. Your dance that sends all the metal sparkles and rain. Your dance that makes me feel like there's no one else but you. Painting colors that I've never seen before after creating an invisible light spectrum. Orbiting around each other just as if you were a proton and I one of your electrons. It looks like it's never gonna end as we're in absence of all concepts such as space and time. It's an undiscovered state in which everything's at our fingertips, both ways of and rewind. And here comes your dance that makes me feel like I'm living again. Your dance that spreads energy like an engine chain. Your dance that nobody will be doing like we do. And here comes your dance that makes rubber brush through our trees and bends. Your dance that stands on a night all sparkles and rain. Your dance that makes me feel like that's all is for you. Yeah, you.
Okay, so back with the after show once again. This was submitted by somebody, and they gave us permission to read it. Mm-hmm. And it was in response to our white privilege episode. And we mentioned on there that people with, I guess...
White names
or get responses to resumes much easier. And somebody sent in a story of one of their Facebook friends that relates to exactly that.
All right, so it says, when I first moved to Utah, I applied around for several part-time positions. I thought I was a good candidate with my food service experience, certifications, Sunday availability, and a state full of Mormons, etc. Oh, sorry, this guy is named Mohammed.
Mm-hmm.
I never once got a call back from any place I submitted an application with my actual name on it. So I started writing Michael instead of Mohammed. 3 Michael applications in, I had 2 return calls and 2 interviews. I continued to receive phone calls asking for Michael. Considering that I'm only half Arab, it has been easy throughout my life to switch up my privilege in this way. I am either white or Arab, depending on convenience. I believe this has given me valuable perspective. Imagine being black or Hispanic, not being able to hide behind white privilege like I did, not getting calls returned on the hundreds of applications you have submitted simply because your name isn't white enough, therefore not being able to properly provide for your children. This is the cyclical reality of things. Where is the solution?
And the study that was mentioned in the white privilege episode, it's been repeated and peer-reviewed so much. Like, if you wanted, we could do a whole episode on that study, but it's been repeated in various cities in various forms, and they always sound that more typical white names get more callbacks and more job opportunities than ethnic names or people or names that are not normally belong to white people or associated with white people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is gross. Just like Muhammad.
Yeah.
In his Facebook message.
Yeah. This is tough out there. Anyways, yeah, thank you for submitting that real story to give us a little bit of perspective.
And we appreciate it.
Oh, yes. If anybody else wants to add a little bit of perspective, just write in at ovfeedback@gmail.com.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Ood Gallifrey.
Sage Murray.
Leon Pilger.
Have a good night.
Love you. Bye.
Hey everyone, it's Leon Filger. It's the morning of the 22nd of February at about 7:42. I'm in the electroconvulsive therapy suite at the Irene and Leslie Dubé Center for Mental Health, and in a little over 2 hours, I'm going to be going for my 15th electroconvulsive therapy treatment. So if you want to know what that is, please flash back to our episode on electroconvulsive therapy. Thanks, and have a good day.